Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, blended podcasts in the secret society of supply chain. And I am so excited to be partnering once again with the incredible team at OptiLogic. Now, OptiLogic has been a guest on Let's Talk Supply Chain, and we've collaborated on a couple of LinkedIn Lives together. In our last live, OptiLogic CEO Don Hicks and I talked about how supply chain design is evolving to include not just a few analysts, but anyone in the company who has supply chain questions to answer. And that means that design can really start bridging the gap between supply chain leaders' objectives and their operations teams. And we're going to be continuing that conversation today. We're going to talk about supply chain design and how to use it to answer tactical transportation questions. So today I'm joined by Hayley Hoffman from OptiLogic, and we also have Derrick of Lineage Logistics. And today we're going to be diving into how Lineage Logistics has solved a particularly time-consuming transportation optimization challenge. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Why their existing solutions weren't cutting it, and how OptiLogic helped them trim their LTL freight analysis down to a tiny 20 minutes. This is collaborative problem solving at its finest, and I cannot wait to find out more. So welcome to the show to both Hayley and Derrick. Hayley, we're going to start with you. Can you introduce yourself? Give us a bit of a reminder of what OptiLogic does in case anyone has missed our previous sessions together.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Sarah. My name's Hayley Hoffman. I'm a principal solution designer based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Been with OptiLogic for 3 years. Prior to that, 3 years with Lamasoft/Coupa in solution design. And then even before that, I did 5 years at a biomedical research laboratory at University of Michigan. So I love applying my scientific background that I got in the lab to supply chain, working with our customers to help solve their challenges. And a little bit about OptiLogic, quick intro there. We're the leading supplier of supply chain design solutions, also based in Ann Arbor, founded in 2018 by Don Hicks, who's, Sarah, as you mentioned, been a guest of the show before. Most recently in October, he was talking about AI and supply chain design. Great conversation there. And we enable businesses to evaluate trade-offs across financials, service, risk, sustainability to design resilient supply chains. And we're at about 70 employees and counting all over the globe.
Awesome.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. And while we're on to introductions, for anybody who is watching the show, we want to hear from you. So make sure that you say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And I want to see all the emojis over the next hour about how you are feeling about this conversation. Fire emoji, happy emoji, you name it. I want to see it all. All right, Derrick, over to you. Can you introduce yourself? Tell us about Lineage and what you do there as well.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Derrick Mullenberg. I'm based out of Holland, Michigan with Lineage. Our headquarters is in Novi, but I work remote. I'm with our data science team, and I'm focused primarily on network optimization and transportation routing. I've been with Lineage for 6 years. Prior to that, I worked for a TMS software developer / provider. I've got about 20 years in supply chain, ranging from direct purchasing, manufacturing, 3PL, 4PL, and then about the last 10 years working with food and CPG. Lineage, as a company, we're the world's largest temperature-controlled warehousing company with over 450 facilities in 18 countries across the world. So it's pretty fun. We get to work on a lot of exciting things. Our mission is to reimagine the global food supply chain, fight food insecurity, and eliminate waste at our facilities. So we help food get from the fields and the factories to the store.
And I can see how both brands are aligned. And I did recently interview Adam, your Lineage co-founder, at TPM as well. And so I have been getting familiar with that story, and I'm super excited to have you both here. So let's get started with a bit of a background. Now, Hayley, we're talking about supply chain design as a way to kind of answer day-to-day transportation questions, but that might surprise some people who think supply chain design is just for big network optimization problems. So talk to us about that. What does that mean? What should everybody know?
Yeah, excited that Derrick's got this really innovative, unique use case because typically people are thinking about supply chain design in these once in a while horizons, 5-year CapEx study, annual distribution network refresh. And even before that, just defining supply chain design, there's a lot of different ways to speak about it. And I love a paraphrase quote from Don about this, that supply chain design is when you remake your current supply chain, the one that you have, into a better one, or the one you need. So the process of modeling current, future state supply chains, analyzing the trade-offs between those different configurations to support your business decisions. So people are pretty comfortable with that definition and applying it to be that once in a while exercise. But we've really seen the paradigm shift, especially in the last couple of years, that once in a while exercise just isn't frequent enough. You've got the external factors, dynamic market, inflation, unpredictable tariffs, weather disasters. I'm sure everybody on the call has a dozen examples or more of those unexpected challenges to the supply chain that you need to be answered quickly, but don't fit into that perfect once a year time frame, or those disruptions don't always occur in the January planning phase for the model. So really need to be agile, resilient, innovative, creative to answer these questions more frequently. And that more frequent basis, we see that that's supported from a few different factors. One is the advancement in algorithms, hardware, tech, to be able to handle these more detailed, complicated models. And then the other is innovators like Derrick, who's got a question that doesn't fit into that perfect once in a while horizon, and then has figured out with tools and support a way to answer that. So can't wait for you to hear about how he reduced his cycle time from days to a few minutes to do this really innovative use case.
Me too. And disruption is all around us. I'm glad that you mentioned tariffs, because I'm pretty sure everybody's redesigning their whole supply chains right now as we speak. And so this is a really timely topic. Now, over the last year or so, I've seen a big rise in conversations like this. And I think tariffs most recently is one of the drivers. But what are some of the other drivers for supply chain design adoption? You mentioned internal factors, external factors. What do they mean? I mean, obviously, external factors, tariffs, et cetera, et cetera. Is there anything else that you would add to the list for either of those?
Yeah, I've got a couple more that come to mind. So starting with the internal factors, just we hear from especially newer customers to design, they need to stay ahead of their competitors. They're going to do a merger, new product introduction, some kind of strategic change. They need those advanced analytics or design tools to support that. So that would be internal factor number one. Number two is just overall that design tools are easier to adopt. The barrier to entry is lower to adopt and use these tools. So the quote, you don't need a PhD to run these tools anymore, or to find someone, the one person at your company that's smart enough to use these and takes a year to learn them, that has shifted. So more people within the organization can adopt those tools. Barrier to entry at OptiLogic, you guys can sign up for a free account and test it out yourself. So totally eliminated the barrier to trying it, which is just a little small promotion there. And then the third kind of internal factor that I'd say, which is very important coming from our mature customers, is that they've created a positive feedback loop at their organization to drive adoption. So the design teams create implementable value, the organization recognizes that, the leadership prioritizes it, and then it just keeps cycling. So those would be the three big internal ones. External, Sarah, you mentioned tariffs is huge. Other macroeconomic or political dynamics, inflation, labor shortage, risk, and the increase in frequency and disruptive weather type of events, other events, and then even just the pressure of adopting AI, machine learning, all of the other buzzwords out there that our customers are coming to us saying, hey, we need to start doing this. Can you please help us?
Well, and an example of an external factor, as we sit here right now, I think I was hearing a cat. Both of you have cats, so you might hear a meow every once in a while over the next hour.
Guilty.
I love it, Derrick. Listen, that's why I just wanted to let everybody know it wasn't, anything but a meowing cat, because it could go a lot of different ways. All right, Derrick, let's bring you into the conversation. What's driven supply chain design adoption at Lineage? What does that look like?
Yeah, so as I'm sure you've talked about with Adam, Lineage is we're a data first company, right? Where we want to innovate. People think about cold storage warehouse and they think, oh, you've got freezers and you put stuff in and you take it out, right? We've at Lineage put a lot of technology into this industry, into those buildings, and the next obvious extension of that is let's look at our transportation, because that's how we're getting things in and out of these buildings. So transportation and supply chain design, that's the next obvious step after we've started and made these big transformations at our warehouses. We do want to be able to continue to grow and improve our service to our customers. Supply chain design allows us to evaluate those choices and quantify that. And ultimately, we want to make sure everybody has the best customer experience we can.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And when we think about cold chain, and cold chain has been a pretty hot topic as well in the industry lately, but you're right. Sometimes we think about it just being those deep freezers and things like that, but it's so, so much more. And I know we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this later on. Can you talk to us broadly about how you are using supply chain design adoption?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I use supply chain design in a more obvious method, looking at network analysis, network optimization, high level kind of stuff. But the more unique use case that Hayley referenced is transportation routing, and it's really letting us take a very detailed look at how small changes in our network can impact individual sites, and it's at the truck level instead of macro, right? So
Right.
that's the more exciting one.
Awesome. And we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Just back to what Hayley said. Kevin says, love the barrier to entry acknowledgement. Sometimes people click into a demo and they get stuck in sales and demo process for 2 weeks. So he's totally agreeing with you. Loving all the comments. Keep them coming. If you have any questions, make sure to put those in the comments as well. So we know that supply chain design is important to modern businesses, but some people might be wondering, why supply chain design for tactical questions like these? So, Derrick, why not use a TMS or a planning system? Like, what limitations were you running into? Why did you need supply chain design?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. So, having been in this field for a while, I've seen and used a lot of tools, interacted with people using different solutions. The first one that comes to mind is obviously simulation, which we do when we're designing a warehouse, and it's extremely detailed. You can model whatever you want. The problem is it's so granular that it's a large effort to get into that, right? And the amount of data you have to have is honestly a little bit cumbersome sometimes for people to want to do that. So simulation's nice. It's a little bit too heavy for these sort of what if questions. In a different vein, a TMS system is at its core an execution system. Right. It's built on workflows. It's built in a method to be efficient for people to do business, not necessarily to ask questions that maybe don't fit how you do business today. So the processes are modeled around your data flows and how you do things today. Going against that, you end up kind of fighting against the system just to try to give it the answers that you want to have. And getting data in and out can often be a challenge as well, just because it's designed as an execution system.
Right. Right. That's such an interesting point. I was talking to somebody earlier today about data and how it's being used, how it's being managed, how they're working with vendors, how some are sharing data, some aren't sharing data, data security. Like there's a lot of different questions around that. And working, I think, with the right system partner can really help you get around some of those big questions. But let's talk about how you got approval for investing into Optilogic, right? A lot of people, a lot of supply chain leaders, supply chain professionals, they are looking at a variety of different solutions and options and there's only so much budget for technology, right? So talk to us about how you got that approval, and had you done supply chain design before, or was this something that was kind of new to you?
Yeah. So I've done supply chain design before in my career, just at different companies. I was actually brought on at Lineage to address a need, which was, hey, they said, guys, we have to do this in order to compete, right? So fortunately for me, I didn't have to make the business case. I was the business case, right?
Great.
So that made the sell a lot easier for me. But realistically, as you scale, and even if you're a small or medium-sized company, if you want to be able to answer those questions and have that agility, I think these kinds of tools are becoming more of a prerequisite rather than a nice to have. If you don't have these kinds of tools, somebody next door, they might have that, right? They might offer that. Customers want solutions, right? And if you can provide them answers in a data-based way, so much better.
Well, and I think also too, what you're talking about is competitive advantage, right?
Exactly.
These are the tools, the resources, the systems, the platforms that could potentially put you ahead of the competition in a very intentional and different way. Amazing. All right. So Hayley, let's bring you back into the conversation. I mean, you're talking to hundreds of companies a year about their supply chain challenge. Is Derrick's situation common? Like, how does design fit in with other supply chain technology, or how does it fit into the overall conversation about supply chain technology?
Yeah, so very, very common. Companies come to us looking for better, easier, faster, more pragmatic way to get to a resilient or more resilient and efficient supply chain. And I love when Derrick's comment there that the TMS is not designed to ask questions. That's really where we see us delivering that value. Is you can't outplan yourself or outdesign yourself out of a poorly planned supply chain. So where design fits in is I botched that. It's really, you can't plan your way out of a bad supply chain design. I think Don said that a million times. Yeah. And so where design comes in, it gives you that sandbox to do the what ifs, do scenario analysis, and get the instructions that then you will feed to the planning and execution systems. But planning and execution, they're great at doing the day-to-day, running the business, but very difficult, like in Derrick's example with his use case, to arrive at those answers in the planning system.
Yeah, so it's really an important tool to have in that toolkit. And I just realized your background has a frog in it, and your demo is called Cosmic Frog. I love it.
This is actually our patio, a picture of our patio. They did a mural that this is a real live one for anyone that comes to visit us in Ann Arbor. You can sit on the patio and have a beverage while looking at this.
Nice. Only in the summer though, right? I mean, technically we're still in
It's a little chilly in the winter, but open year round. Yep.
All right. So Derrick, let's dig into the situation you had at Lineage. Like, one of your core service offerings is transportation consolidation. So you're combining customers' LTL freight with other customers' LTL freight, which we do in ocean freight as well. And I can imagine that, and I know from experience that it can be very complex, this task of, combining, consolidating, etc. So how had you been approaching the problem before, and why did you decide to make a change? Like, a lot of people don't make a change just to make a change, right? There has to be some pain points in there. So talk to us about what that looked like.
Yeah. So when I started at Lineage, I think the approach was much as it is at a lot of companies, where you say, okay, I'm going to plan to route this freight. Let's get a map. Let's put some pins in it, put some string on it. Maybe I'm showing my age a little bit, but you can get pretty close to a reasonable answer just by engaging your brain and looking at that, right? Now, the question is, can you scale that? And I think the answer is no, you can't, right? And how can you measure success, right? So at its core, and what I always try to bring to the table when I tell people, why are we doing this stuff? If you can't measure it, you really don't know if you're getting better, right? And that's one of the guiding principles of this analysis was we need to be able to measure what happens if customer A moves from this warehouse to this warehouse, or if we want to evaluate moving this particular group of products out of here over there. And those are the kinds of questions that we can answer not only at a macro level, but at a deep level using transportation routing. So the only way to do that prior to having OptLogic would have been to say, hello, Mr. Logistics Planner. I hope you're having a nice day. Can you please take these 500 routes that you ran last year, subtract this one customer's orders, tell me what that looks like, right? That's not really going to work. Can you do it in a TMS? Absolutely. Can you do it in a reasonable time frame? Maybe once. But we want to be able to run this, monthly, and evaluate as stuff changes within the network. So even as I started down this journey of putting it in software, the first versions of the model I ran took me about 2 weeks to run for 3 of our facilities.
Wow.
So as I was able to move and automate more portions of that, we got to, okay, now I can do 9 sites and we can have it all done in 20 minutes, right? Now that's the result of 2 years of work and me learning Python and a whole bunch of other things, but it was enabled by the techniques that we have available to leverage in the packages and the code with Cosmic Frog.
Well, and I wonder, in that scenario that you were saying, was that an email or did you walk over to them and say, this is what I want, and run away without getting slapped?
I sat next to a lot of our logistics planners. So one of the things you got to do is you got to go and talk and understand why was it routed this way. So I had many conversations with them just to figure out, am I running this correctly? Because I'm not a freight planner. Right. Even though I worked for a company that develops TMS, everybody has their nuances and different business processes. So,
and I'm sure at some point or another, maybe not in your organization, but in some, we've always done it this way. Right? It's going to come up one time or another. And that's where innovation and conversation can take place, and we can create that change. So can you sort of describe how the current process works and how it's better than the old way? I mean, you did just say that you obviously can do those route planning a lot faster, but what are some of the biggest benefits to the team and to the company that you're seeing?
Yeah. So one thing that I didn't even think about when I started down this was just having metrics and performance recorded in a way that we can go back and look over time and determine, looking back, when we made this change, did we actually see what we thought was going to happen, right? So as I've gone back and run all of these historical routing problems, we now have a thing in Power BI where we can go and look, and we can say, oh, okay, did this customer's volume changes affect the routing of the future loads, right? Which is always something we tried to estimate, but you can't really know. The big part of it is, yes, it's faster. I don't have to spend as much time doing this. But a key part of that automation is reliability and repeatability, right? So I don't have to go to my computer and press a button and wait for the answer to come. I can schedule it. I know it's going to run. Everybody knows there's a cadence they can rely on. There are other people in the business that said, hey, you have this. I've been looking for that data for a long time. Can I see that report now, right? Because I want to use it for such and such use case. So it's grown beyond the original scope of the few people that I was originally running it for.
Well, yeah, and it changes the conversation. I mean, you can now go into a meeting with several of the leaders of the organization and say, this is what we're doing. This is what it's capable of. And that's when those new use cases will come to light, and you'll be able to support them in that. with one tool.
Yeah. And one of the big things was that when we started, it was more about what if we move this business around? Now we've gotten to the point where we can say, a customer has approached us and they want to be in this site. Can you help us understand what that's going to do? Are we going to need more trucks? Are we going to be more effective?
Right.
And that helps us honestly
Cash
get a better answer back to the customer, right?
Mm-hmm. But also cash flow too, right?
Sure,
Like
sure.
what are the future purchases, investments, and things that we need to make that we can, have an idea of today and plan.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So without getting too technical, because we need to keep this a little bit high level, but can you give us an idea of how you set this solution up? Like one of the biggest questions that we have when we're talking about technology is onboarding. Like what did that look like? How long did it take? Do I need a super user? I mean, Hayley talked about that earlier. We don't need a super user with this solution, I believe, because you mentioned that earlier. But what did that look like? Give us an idea.
Yeah, so I had some workflows set up in our legacy solution that we had prior. So I spent a good amount of time converting those over into Python, but that's mostly because I had the business process in place already. I was just putting in a new tool. Getting it actually running inside Cosmic Frog was actually relatively painless. How it runs today now is almost entirely hands off. Like I said, we have it scheduled. We're using our data warehouse, which is in Snowflake. Python scripts go and pull that information, run SQL queries, hand it off to Cosmic Frog. It runs those jobs, gets the answers back, and I have a collection of scripts that then take those results, do a little bit of formatting, and then present them to the end users in Power BI.
So you're doing a little bit of formatting, but really you're putting it into English.
Yes, and for people that haven't seen the output of these, right? Most people don't say, you know what I'd really like? I'd like to see a table with 20,000 rows. That's what speaks to me, right? I want to give people actionable intelligence, right? So
that's why I didn't say spreadsheet. I said English.
Yes, we developed a more concise form that looks at, okay, how does this change our accounts payable and receivable, and what does this look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Hayley, we're going to bring you back into the conversation, but I have one more question for Derrick, because as I mentioned before, supply chain leaders, supply chain professionals, they got a lot of options, right? It's kind of overwhelming. People are overwhelmed. They don't know which way to turn. And there are multiple options for supply chain design partners. Why did you choose OptiLogic specifically? Like, run us through how you did that, what you considered, what that looked like.
For sure. So not everything's going to be the best fit for every company, right? You got to evaluate who your users are going to be, how many users you have, who the consumers of your information are going to be, and what kind of people are going to be in the solution running the models and doing that kind of stuff, right? So one of the big draws to me was, as a user who's been in this for a while and had relatively automated as much as I could of this process, I was looking to make that next step. And that next step was the Python package that's available with OptiLogic. And I kind of joked with Hayley. I said, the limit of Python is how much do you want to have to deal with the code that you wrote yourself, right? You're limited by your own creativity in the sort of solution you want. Because often every piece of software has its limits, right? And people do their best to try to say, okay, this is going to cover 90% of the use cases. It's that last 10% that may take a little bit of time, may take a lot of time. But if you give people the flexibility to create that themselves, you can really streamline the whole effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to acknowledge everybody in the comments right now. We've got a lot of great comments. I do want to let you know that we have some really great resources in those comments as well. So go and check out those links. And I want to acknowledge Joyce over on my personal LinkedIn as well. I acknowledge that you have a bit of a lengthy comment, which we will try to get to in a little bit. All right, Hayley. So, Is using supply chain design for LTL freight decisions something companies in other industries could put into practice as well? Like, can you give us an example of how this could be used by, say, a shipper or maybe another logistics provider that has potentially a different use case than Lineage?
Yeah, of course. And Derek, thanks for the great explanation of what you've been doing. And for the audience, if your ears perked up at any pieces of or any piece of that, those are all areas where we could help. But likely your use case doesn't fit exactly. So really, regardless of your industry, we can support you in decision making around carrier selection, service level verification, freight rate analysis, shipment consolidation, fleet routing optimization, any of those strategic transportation questions. But going beyond routing, you can include transportation and what we've been talking about as one of those trade-offs, but bring in everything across the end-to-end supply chain, the warehousing piece, the sourcing piece, full end-to-end, if that's where your challenges or questions lie. So a lot of different places that you can go. Derek, I love this use case, and especially earlier that positive feedback loop comment. That's exactly what you're doing as far as building a best practice of you're making it repeatable, you're sharing the results in a beautiful Power BI dashboard instead of saying look at row 2700 for the answer in Excel. So it's we're all learning a lot from how you're making this, not only from the technology piece but the process piece as well.
Well, and really, what version are we on, Hayley? 2,000 rows.
Right.
Version 54.
Maybe row 900,000. Yeah.
I actually just recently read that there was and I can't remember the numbers. If I can find it, I'll mention it later, but there was a huge supply chain or procurement being handled on Excel as well. And I think recently it came out that the Formula One was handling a whole bunch on Excel as well, which is crazy. But it is being used in the industry, and we do need platforms and tools to be able to help, mitigate that. So we're not downloading and uploading, and we're on, line 2000. But I loved what you talked about in being able to use this in a variety of different scenarios. And I appreciate you for sharing that because, like you said, not every use case is the same. And everybody will use it a little bit differently, and they want to use it a little bit differently because, as we mentioned earlier, it can be a competitive advantage, right? Is that what you're seeing from talking to your customers, Hayley? Is that, they are using supply chain design and working with OptiLogic as a competitive advantage?
Yes, and I love Derek's comment too earlier about how that's how he's seeing it and how Lineage is seeing it as well. Is just you can get by on the spreadsheet planning, and I know we joke about that, but I'm not surprised to hear Formula One might be using it. We hear that all the time, and you really need that scientific evidence backed, the metrics again that Derek mentioned that come out of one of these purpose-built design tools to really convince people and sell the business on what decision you're going to go forward with.
Yeah. So I want to go back to Derek on this one. Like, what other supply chain questions have you or do you plan to tackle with supply chain models or supply chain design? Like, I'd love to hear you've already implemented this. It's working. You've realized the different use cases that you didn't even plan on happening at the moment. I'm sure you're looking or you're thinking about what else can we use this for in the future?
Absolutely. So one of the things I forgot to mention too, one of the big sellers was why we picked OptiLogic was the ability to scale. So historically, this kind of software has been run on your laptop. So imagine I'm running 180 scenarios and each one takes 8 minutes. That's a lot of real world time. With Cosmic Frog, I just hit go and it goes off into the cloud and I come back and get the results. And my laptop isn't a jet engine underneath my desk. So I like that. That's a time savings. And having that automation done now, looking forward, I'm going to try to look at all of the data we have available in our organization. We have a lot of customers. We have a lot of warehouses. We have customers that may not be a part of our transportation program today. I want to see if we can leverage OptiLogic to help us identify, customers that might fit into those transportation programs. And I want to do that in a in a systemic way rather than waiting for sales to come to me and say, what do you think about this guy over here? I want to be able to take and give them a list and say, I think you should approach these customers because of factors 1 through 7 and the scaling we gave them. And I think they'd be a great fit. Right. So kind of Uno reverse it on the sales guy.
Well, and I like the fact that you talked about working with a partner that you can scale with. Like we said, there's lots of disruptions. We don't necessarily know where business is going. We can try to plan for it, but we obviously need technology partners and solutions that are going to scale with us as we grow and expand. And that's a really, really important point to that. But also, I think the other important point that you made is being proactive, and it changes the conversation with the customer, right? You're able to, and your sales, you are empowering your sales team to go back into that customer and say, here's the data that we're collecting. These are the tools that we're working with right now. And we have the option to, help optimize what you're doing with us. And this is what we see as a potential future for our growth together. So not only is it scalable on the back end, it's also scalable on the front end as well.
Exactly.
And I'm sure they love that. I mean, who doesn't love an excuse to go back in and talk to the customer?
And honestly, if I was a customer, I'd probably be happy too if somebody can come in and say, we've already identified an opportunity that's probably going to let you lower your costs and increase your service. That's another couple check boxes I can put on my annual review.
That's right. That's right. Can you imagine walking in with that? So I just want to remind everybody who's listening and watching, we want all your questions in the comments because we are getting to that time and I want to make sure that we can get to all of those. But I want to take a moment to talk about tariffs and how they affect transportation rates at the moment, because this is kind of a hot topic. Supply chain design is a hot topic. Well, so is tariffs. So Hayley, how are your customers doing sort of what if analysis around this?
Yeah. So it's almost like what if of the what ifs or what if analysis on steroids right now,
right?
Because it's you're having to make what ifs about what if the tariff hits? What size will it be? When will it hit? How can we minimize financial impact? Change sourcing strategies around, create a risk playbook to be able to turn on scenario A, turn off scenario B, hopefully shift with some agility there. But the main thing as far as advice that we can help you with, our team has done in Jen Randall with the marketing team, we've got a lot of blogs, a lot of resources that you can access on optologic.com to get some advice, some best practices there. And our team is always at the ready to help with these as well, because it's a lot of unknowns. But one other comment to add to it, as far as our mature customers that have building this design competency for a while, one tool that they're leveraging is sensitivity analysis, so that they can see a whole broad range of possibilities, not just the scenario A versus scenario B, but potentially hundreds or even thousands of different configurations, and find where that tipping point would be of, okay, if the tariff goes above this percentage, go with plan A versus plan B. And can't predict the future, as Don says, but you can get that playbook coming out of your design tools.
Get the playbook and get as close as possible to it.
Yes.
So, Derrick, how does Lineage view the tariff disruptions? And are you using modeling to prepare at all, kind of like what Hayley was talking about?
Yeah, I've had a few customers reach out to me as well to help them kind of get an idea of how that works. And I agree with Hayley. Oftentimes, it's not like you can click your heels and switch a supplier, right? So you're kind of stuck with it. And like I said before, if you can't measure it, it's going to be difficult to know what happens. So if you've got a model in place and now you can ask it these sort of questions, you can hopefully get some insight and talk to your friends in accounting and say, here's the range of possibilities I see. Here's what we can plan on. I don't know where it's going to fall. It's probably not worse than this and probably not better than Y, right?
But also think about it, right? Like April 2nd, I believe it's April 2nd. April 2nd is coming. You can give these possibilities over to whoever needs them.
Yeah,
And you can say, take April 2nd afternoon out of your calendar because we're going to do one of 7 things.
exactly.
And that might mean changing some things in the database, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It just depends on what the role is and what actually needs to change. And for that change to be put in place, you can at least plan and say, hey, take the afternoon out of your calendar. We're going to do one of these 7 things.
Yep.
Love that. So Yvette made a comment in the comments, time is money and we need the data to make smart decisions. Smart girl. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really like that. It's a little bit longer, so go and read that. But I do want to talk a little bit about the people part of the equation. Like for a company to do supply chain design continuously as a competitive advantage, like we've been talking about before, having the right people, skills, support is essential. I've said this before. Digital transformation is only 20% technology. So this is an integral part of the conversation when we're talking about bringing in a new tool, platform, etc. So Derrick, can you tell us what your design team looks like? Like who are the internal stakeholders interacting with the solution? And I think this gives us a good idea of, what kind of resources we need.
Yeah, so I'll preface this by saying we're probably not like a lot of maybe shippers that would be using this solution. We have our own customers, right, as a service provider. So I've got customers that are internal customers and customers that are external customers.
Yep. Oh,
and
don't I know?
we use OptiLogic for everybody. So because of where I sit within the Lineage organization within data science, I have access to all of the data sources that we have in Lineage and people that can help me leverage all that and work on Python and things like really technical that may be out of the reach of maybe an average or starting user. So we have 2 people in the organization that are actively running the tool. In terms of people that are looking at the output, many, many more than that, right? So we've got people, several people within an organization and several different organizations that are looking at the outputs of these. I work with our business development team. We work with our strategic customers. Those would be consumers of the output of our projects. And then we have project managers that help us balance all those plates, right? Because there's only 2 of us and there's a lot of models to be run. So they are invaluable in making sure we have a smooth journey for everyone.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And actually, while you were talking about that, I had this funny thing, Hayley. I'm going to give you a bit of suggestion. You should run a cosmic frog party and you should have little frog, stuffies. I call them stuff. I have nephews, stuffies. And then you get a frog and you get a frog and you get a frog. That's going to bring everybody together and everybody's going to be super excited about bringing on a new platform. Okay.
I got one already.
We could do Oprah style at Opticon, June 4th and 5th. You guys can come and see if we do that.
Go see OptiLogic. What is it? Opticon?
Opticon. Yep, June 4th and 5th in Detroit.
You're going to throw a cosmic frog party and I want to be invited. I don't know about everybody else, but if you're in the comments, you want to be invited, raise your hand because I think we should all go at this point. So Derrick, one more question. You've got a lot of experience in the industry. Do you have any advice for other companies on how to get started with design?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things I can say is start small, right? So often I've seen people come and say, I have an idea for a model. I'm going to run it. I'm going to solve world hunger. I'm going to do all the things. Tell me how to fill out the spreadsheet. I need to fill out all of these columns and I want to put 100,000 rows of data in here and I want to hit go and it's going to be the most beautiful project I've ever run, right? That's almost guaranteed to end in heartache. Start small. Start with something you understand. Even after, 15 years working in this stuff, I still will make an example model because I'm not quite sure how those cost elements will interact. I just made one yesterday with 2 customers and 3 different freight rates because I needed to make sure that I was applying that logic correctly.
Mhm.
So don't be afraid to start small. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think it's called Frogger Pond is the community bulletin board that we have with Optologic. It's been great. I've
Awesome.
gotten some valuable insights from other people that have been in this industry for a while. Everybody's super helpful. Nobody's afraid to share code. We're all trying to run the same stuff.
I love that. And I love all the names. I giggle because like the names that we come up with for these things, or especially OptiLogic, it just makes it fun, right? It's a reminder that we are in supply chain and supply chain is a fun place to be. And it should be fun and it should be exciting. And we should be having cosmic frog parties. All right. Hayley, so the Lineage team had design experience when they got started, which is what Derrick talked about a little bit earlier. What about companies that are totally new to design? Like, where does a supply chain exec begin, and how does OptiLogic help companies get started?
Yeah, a great place to begin is identifying that, hey, this sounds, the bells are going off. This sounds like a capability I want to explore or potentially need at my business. And at OptiLogic here, we're well positioned to support that brand new customer that's working in Excel or the push pin and strings, like Derrick commented earlier, all the way to the decades plus center of excellence team. So specifically for those new teams, we've got a methodology to assess what are your priorities, what order should we tackle them in, and have a best practices for adoption, making sure that you get the value. And to Derrick's point, we make a list of maybe 15 burning questions that you want to achieve, and the prioritizing is really key there, because you can't boil the ocean. You got to start small, grow the capability and the technology as the process is growing as well. So
yeah, we want to measure expectations so that we don't have any disappointment if you go big too quick, too fast.
Exactly. Yep. Anytime you try to tackling a home project or something like that, you know how it goes if you say, okay, I'm going to finish everything in this one day.
Well, and I think you mentioned at the beginning of the show something about being able to test. Can you test the Cosmic Frog or the OptiLogic solution? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. And the small wireframe model that Derrick was mentioning, just doing something simple, that's a great application. If you go to optologic.com, create a free account, you can have a trial of working within the software with example models and access those blogs and information I was talking about for topics like tariffs and other burning design topics that we've got there to share.
Awesome. And you can find all of that at optilogic.com in case you're looking for that. I know we've also got some links to a lot of great resources in the comments as well. So make sure to click on those and head over there. So we're coming to the end of the discussion. I think this has been great. It's been awesome to get to know Derrick, from your point of view, what this has looked like and what this collaboration could be, right? For other people, not only for Lineage, but then also looking at OptiLogic. So what do you think is one key takeaway from today's discussion that you would like people to walk away from, either thinking about, taking action on, something like that? Because I'd like everybody to walk away with and taking some action on something. So Derrick, I'm going to start with you and then we'll go to Hayley.
I'll go with what I said last, which is, don't be afraid to dream big, but start small, right? If you can get some success projects checked off, build that trust, then work your way up to solving the problems that, can make a real financial impact to your company.
Absolutely. Hayley, last but not least, you get the last word almost.
Yeah, I'm going to be provocative that the old design approach is dead. With these examples, you see we're getting into the new era of answering questions more pragmatically. And instead of trying to fit the problem specifically to the solution, you can tailor the solution to fit your problem, meet your needs, and be super creative like Derrick was with his approach.
And I think kind of quickly and easily, right?
Absolutely.
That's the name of the game. Nobody wants a long, drawn out, onboarding anymore.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that wraps things up perfectly. Thank you so much to Hayley and Derrick for joining me. Supply chain design is only going to grow in importance, and it's been really insightful to hear the impact that it's been able to have for Lineage with the help of Optilogic and effective collaboration. I always know that I love the word collaboration. So if you want to find out how Optilogic can help you with your supply chain design, head over to optilogic.com. Thank you so much to everybody who made their way to watching and listening and commenting today. We appreciate all of you, and we'll see you again soon.